The 3 dates are on a flyer that Christine nicely prepared. I just want to make sure that people are aware this is not a one and done. This is not even a 1 year and done. This is a multi-year, in some ways a decade-long and a generational fight, because as many of you know, clean air and environmental justice is a defining issue, like criminal justice reform, of the next 20 years in California public policymaking. And we have to be leaders, not laggards, on the accountability that makes the changes necessary to stop treating our lives and our kids' lives and our seniors' lives as expendable here on the east side especially. We have done the work to engage coalitions all the way around Shoal Canyon Dump, in Glendale, Pasadena, Eagle Rock, Highland Park, and especially in Glen Oaks Canyon in Glendale. I'm telling you folks, we made a difference because every member of the City Council in Glendale reminds us of that every time we appear before them, every time we bring out 50, 100, 150 people to those meetings. And last March, as some of you who were there know, we did the impossible with Glendale policymakers sitting as judge, juries, and executioner on the industrialization of that dump site on March the 20th. We won a 2-to-1 vote before the Glendale City Planning Commission to stop the industrialization of the dump site and to force them into a full environmental impact report on that separated, piecemeal project involving Grayson and the Grayson Power Plant and the dump site. So please, if you can, come out to the meetings in April, help Christine here in Elysian Valley with the accountability on Taylor Yards and air quality, and keep the ball rolling and moving forward on accountability and valuing our lives and our lungs and our future here in the river communities of the east side and adjacent neighborhoods. Thank you. Thanks for doing that work. And I want to call out one hero from Eagle Rock's work of accountability, our new Democratic delegate, like Ceci Dominguez, Eileen Hattrick, who's been a real leader in our efforts. Next up, we have a visit from a member of our club who is coming back to say hi and also to take questions. And I'm hoping that our questions tonight can be respectful, even when they convey heat. He is not afraid of heat, but I am afraid of unruly Democrats. So I want to make sure that our process tonight is respectful, but also probative, and where necessary, as trenchant as possible. Because Democrats have questions, but we are welcoming back to our ranks a member of our club for whom our members gave him his first endorsement in 2017 in his path to an upset victory for sheriff. We have concerns triggered by the first 4 months of his tenure. Yes, we have concerns. But we are also here to hear his response to some of the well-documented concerns that people in this room may have played a role in helping to frame for fellow Angelinos as part of our work for earned media that helps educate and engage progressive Democrats in the accountability that's necessary to run our county. Our county, as you know, is the biggest jurisdiction in our state. If it were its own state, it would rank number 9, I believe, in the country with nearly 11 million people. We have a big county, but we also have big expectations. And for a new sheriff who is a Democrat, who comes from our own ranks, who is a veteran, and who has been part of our work for the last 2 years, this is an important opportunity both to hear honestly, but to ask tough questions, and to hear his honest answers before us tonight. So, I would ask that we give a warm welcome to our member and prepare our questions, because the Q&A session, thanks to Jackie Lacey's untimely departure from us tonight, we'll have a little bit of extra time, and I will make sure that we mind the stack and get to the questions that all we can before Alex leaves us tonight. So please, give a warm welcome to Alex Villanueva. And as a point of privilege, I want to take a moment to present Alex a book about the school-to-prison pipeline on behalf of a member of our club, Daryl Park. The book, rather aptly, somewhat humorously, is called Juvenile Offenders, From Big Wheels to the Big House. And this, sadly, is a story that documents several testimonials about children, students, wrongly brought into the ranks of criminal justice simply by deemed misbehaviors in their schools. We have an ongoing problem. We have ongoing scrutiny, at last, of that problem. But Daryl, as the father of a young man of color, particularly wanted you to have this book and to draw from it wherever possible. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Hans. Thank you, the EAPD members. And let me first start by saying there's a lot going on. A lot has happened in the last 3.5 months. And to reform, rebuild, and restore the Sheriff's Department is not an easy task. There's a lot of competing interests. And I was at the Civilian Oversight Commission today and had an entire group of people devoted to saying, I'm not working with ICE. And I should be working with ICE and recall Villanueva. And on the other side, I had a group of people saying not working enough to get rid of ICE. So you literally have this whole range of emotions regarding the issue of ICE in the jail. And what I did the very first week in office is I physically removed all of the ICE, uniformed ICE agents from the county jail. We got them out of the jails, we got them out of the station houses, we got them out of the courthouses. And there was a lot more going on than was actually that was led the public to believe. Because of the presence of ICE agents inside the jails, they were interviewing inmates at will. They were basically on fishing expeditions inside the inmate reception center. And so they were identifying people and then deporting, arranging for the deportation. So by removing the ICE agents from the jails, that eliminated their opportunity to do that. We still have to cooperate in terms of SB 54. Now this is where it gets strict. The state legislature enacted SB 54, watered down version as it may be, but we're using that as our base level. And we decided to alter it as best we could while still preserving a modicum of safety in the general picture. So the 151 misdemeanor crimes, we reduced it down to 101. The washout period from 5 years, we shrunk it down to 3 years. We met with the ACLU, we met with Cheater Law and a coalition of groups, and they had 7 demands. We actually honored 6 of the 7 demands, and the 7th demand we went halfway towards, and we couldn't go all the way. So 6.5 out of 7 is actually not bad in terms of driving public policy. So that's where we stand with ICE today. And even in spite of that, I'm still getting complaints from both sides. It's too far, it's not enough. But we're trying to strike a balance between making sure that our undocumented population is not afraid of talking, working with local law enforcement, and at the same time, our most dangerous, violent individuals that have been sentenced, convicted of violent felonies are still being transferred, according to SB 54. So that accomplishes that. But that's just one side of it. The other one is the body-worn cameras. First week in office, again, we tried to figure out what was the holdup. Why can't we get body-worn cameras out there? Well, the price tag first given was $55 million, and it would require 239 people or staff members to man the data collection and make sure that the Public Record Act requests were honored, and to do all the downloading all the data to disseminate it properly. We reduced that number from $55 million down to $13 million. The number of personnel involved from 239, we shrunk it down to 25, and we could have this up and running by this summer. That information was presented to the Board of Supervisors, and they're dragging their feet. And they want to do a 5th study, because 4 studies in a row wasn't enough. They wanted to do a 5th study. And then they said, well, we got the money, but now, well, we really want to make sure we're doing everything correctly, so they're slowing down the whole process. We already have 5 stations identified, they're wired, they're ready to go to get the body-worn cameras up. We can have the entire county up and running by next summer, but at the pace that the county, the Board of Supervisors, the CEO's office is operating, it leads me to believe that now the problem is in their court, the ball's in their court. Anyone wants to call them and ask them, what are you waiting for on the body-worn cameras, please, you'll be doing everyone a big favor on that. So feel free to light them up, all 5 members of the Board of Supervisors. That's that issue. Other issue is about reforming in the LA jails. And I spoke throughout the campaign trail. I gave some concerns about the presence of violence and how violence was increasing in the jails. And when we actually got a hold of the actual numbers from the department, these are not new numbers, these are the numbers that the department had in their own database, and we published them, all of a sudden I got a huge backlash. Oh my God, I'm trying to undo reforms that were working so well. According to who? That was a big issue. They weren't. We had a 204% increase in inmates assault on staff. We had a 31% increase in inmates assaulting inmates. And then deputies using force against inmates increased 99%. And this is in a 5-year period from 2013 to 2018. And this is the best data that's available, reliable, from actual crime reports developed by the department, used by the department. The only concern is we're underreporting. People tend to not report all the crimes in all the correct databases. We're not over-reporting, we're actually under-reporting. So the problem may be actually bigger than that. So based on that, it's a 3-dimensional problem. All of a sudden, I'm somehow canceling reforms. We have not changed one paragraph, one sentence in any single reform effort. Any public claim that somehow we're undoing reforms is patently false. And I want to make that very clear. What we're trying to do is understand how the implementation of the reforms actually produce the exact opposite result of what the reforms were intended to do. If the reforms were intended to reduce violence, I would expect if I take a measurement 5 years later, I'd have lower violence. I actually have twice as much violence. So how did this happen? Now we're trying to understand this. So we're working with the federal monitors, we're working with the Office of Inspector General, we're working with all the different individuals and entities, including the ACLU, that was involved in all these consent decrees and the different reform efforts to try to figure out what went wrong in the implementation of these policies and how can we fix it moving forward. And that's what we're doing. Straightforward. Being very transparent about it. We want to make sure our personnel are accountable for what they're doing. We cannot substitute inmates having their bones crushed by having our personnel with their bones crushed as well. It's not somehow an acceptable trade-off. No one should have their bones crushed because they work or they're held, detained in our county jail system. And that is just a responsible way to run the entire jail system. It's a complex issue. It didn't develop overnight. A lot of the policies were well-intentioned, but they were not implemented correctly. They didn't think long-term, okay, let me have my monitoring efforts in place so I can see how, as these policies are implemented, the impact on the inmate population, on the safety of everyone inside the jail. But those monitoring efforts were never put in place. It was kind of left as, well, I guess they'll work because it sounds good. But we have to do better than that. We have to actually pay attention. And I'm responsible for the safety of everyone inside the county jails. Let me see how.
3 more minutes.
3 more minutes. Okay, last and not least, truth and reconciliation. You heard a lot of claims about truth and reconciliation. The adoption of that phrase is somehow offensive. Well, the entire idea of truth and reconciliation, just like in any nation that's overcoming a major tragedy in its midst, where you have both the perpetrators and the victims working side by side, living side by side in any organizational environment, be it a nation, be it a state, be it an organization, you have to somehow reconcile the two parties. Because I can't fire everyone who is responsible, especially when the statute of limitations is going on, but I still have the same employees working side by side where one harmed the other one. That's the whole idea behind truth and reconciliation. There's nothing outlandish, underhanded about it. It's trying to make everyone as whole as possible, learn from our past mistakes, and make sure we apply those moving forward so we don't come across the same mistakes in the future. So if we're not learning from our mistakes, then what on earth are we doing? That's all it is. Okay, so we're doing an awful lot of things. Our recruitment numbers are moving upward. We're in positive territory. We were shrinking and dying as an organization, but on November 6th, something very wonderful happened. And all of a sudden, people realized, wow, we can actually fix this department. And now recruitment numbers, and we're recruiting locally. We're not recruiting from out of state, not even out of county. We're hiring our own kids to police our own communities. And that's how we build trust between the community and the department. We start working together. So all these things are happening very positively. We had 865 deputies positions that were vacant. These are hard item positions, the ones that serve you in the community in the jails. We're on schedule to complete and get to full staffing model by the end of next year, 2020. That turnaround in 2 years is unheard of, but we actually have a chance of actually succeeding at that. So that's a very important step forward. Why is that so important? Because a fully staffed department means I can send all my employees to training. I can keep them, their training level up to the minimum standards that's mandated by the state. Continued professional training, standards of training for correction. All this training allows for deputies to be competent. Their perishable skills they don't perish, those skills. They're updated, their legal information they use to do their job correctly is there. Use of force policies, all these things, everything has to do with de-escalation techniques, all the wonderful things you hear about in the press, we're not giving our own employees. Yet we expect them somehow to do their job without the proper training. A fully staffed model allows us to train our employees, allows us to retain our employees so they're not walking away and costs us a fortune to try to replace them. All these good things are starting to happen now. We're moving in the right direction. We're working with the Inspector General, with the Oversight Commission, and we're going to keep moving forward to serve the community.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Tonight's gathering is a public gathering, and as you can see, pictures and images are fair game at this gathering. And we are joined, I am told, by someone that whose voice is familiar to many of us from his work at KBCC, perhaps not so vigorously during the recent fund drive, where I think he got a little bit of a break, where his colleagues were working overtime. But Frank Stoltz with KBCC. So, we are now at the point where we have questions, but I do want people to be aware before we get into the questions with the sheriff that we do have a special guest with us tonight involving the district attorney's race. Jackie Lacey is not with us tonight, but someone challenging Jackie Lacey next year is with us tonight, a new member of our club, Richard Ceballos. And we will hear from Richard at the conclusion of the sheriff's remarks. I will do my best to keep the stack here tonight. And if you have a question, I'll seek to recognize you and add you to the staff. The first question tonight is from a new member of our club. Jeremy, I believe, in the back of the room, has the first question for the sheriff. Jeremy?
Yes.
Where's Jeremy? There he is.
Hi. I'm Jeremy. Yes, my first time here. And Saturday is going to be the 10th anniversary of the murder of John Horton in Side Valley.
Use your outdoor voice, please. I can't. The microphone won't stretch back there. I'm sorry.
So Saturday is going to be the 10th anniversary of the murder of John Horton inside an LA County jail. And the problem deputies who committed this murder got their jobs back. And it's hard for constituents to feel like they can trust the system when officers who are killing people inside the county jails and officers who are killing people on the streets are getting their jobs back. And I know you have some say in this as the sheriff, and I was wondering what your thoughts are on police officers who have murdered civilians and sheriff department officers who have murdered civilians.
And Jeremy, what neighborhood are you from?
I'm from Los Feliz.
Welcome. Welcome. Thank you for the question.
That's a very good question. First and foremost, we have to have faith in a process. The process has to be transparent, it has to be thorough. Hold on. And we have to make sure that we have all of the witnesses identified, all the evidence is collected properly, interviews are done. If there's videotape evidence, everything that we can, we have to have it used, we have to have it actually thoroughly analyzed. We have to present a solid case to the district attorney's office. We're not in charge of the prosecution side of it, but we're in charge of actually doing a thorough investigation and presenting this evidence to the district attorney. Now, there's always issues, and I know this is a big concern about one agency investigating itself and how how truthful that could be because we're basically policing ourselves. That is a problem. However, I've actually approached both the district attorney and I've spoken with LAPD chief, and this actually subject has come up. There's a promising development. We'll leave that as we get more details on it. That might resolve some of the issue, but the point is we have to hold each other accountable. I'm going to work very hard to make sure my employees, all of the deputies, everyone who is authorized to use the deadly force is properly trained, properly screened.
How does 5 officers beat 1 man to death and they get their job?
Hold on,
That
let me.
doesn't make any sense.
We'll get to you. You're in the stack.
All right. Now, and the training part is very, very important. And every time there's a tragedy involves an untimely death of anyone in the community, and there's a blue ribbon panel, a community group, they do an investigation and they come up with a set of recommendations. What is the number 1 recommendation they always make, every single one? We have to train our personnel to a higher standard. Do we ever do that?
Ask the community what they want. Ask John Horton's mother.
Please, we get to more questions.
Ask
If we can keep order, we'll get to more questions, and you will have a chance to ask the
Your
sheriff.
people are not.
Please continue, Sheriff.
Okay,
It's called a
now,
follow-up question.
I was elected on November 6th. I cannot account for what happened before. I was not in charge of the
They're still
department.
on your watch.
Hold on.
They're still your employees.
Ma'am, questioners get follow-up questions. I would love to recognize you.
Jeremy, do you mind me asking a follow-up question?
I would love to
So
give
it's
you the
been
next
10
question.
years. What's the
After-
answer to help?
Okay, but now you're badgering.
Question number 3.
Ask, now you're
I'll get
badgering.
to you.
Let the man speak, please.
What you gonna do? I don't care what you say. He said I could ask a follow-up question. I did.
This is a
Let's-
forum, please.
Let's keep it civil. Let's
So
keep
let
it
me
moving.
say this, all y'all who want to sit around and be polite because your people are not being killed by police, quit telling us we
I'm
have
brown
to
just
shut
like you,
up.
sister. I'm brown too.
I'm black, I'm black, I'm black.
Then you ought to say something instead of standing in the corner and trying to stop people from saying something.
I'm waiting to say something, but you are now
We
interrupting that.
can't be talking about the
Please let the
politics
sheriff
of
speak.
civilities. No, we're not. We're not. And just because you told me to sit down,
Folks.
guess what? I'm not. I'm
Folks,
not.
let's-
I'm not gonna be quiet.
Let's abide by the
when you
ground
talk.
rules that we all agreed to
No,
at the start of this
I didn't agree to
meeting.
shit. I didn't agree to shit.
Then
So
ma'am,
let me tell you something.
This is the
Black
first
people
warning,
are being
okay?
killed.
It's the
You're
first
not gonna-
warning.
You aren't the police.
Listen to
You, I don't care about
Wait a
you.
minute, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
This is about
So
white
often
people,
the same thing,
gentrifiers
and you got
trying
people
to
put out.
silence
Don't do
black
that.
and brown people.
Don't give warnings.
this is a meeting
Don't
about
give
code.
warnings.
Sir, you're out of order too.
What?
Let's try to abide by the ground
And
rules.
what do you have to have a right to silence black
Don't
and
give
brown
warnings.
It took 3 minutes to get through that answer. We have plenty of more time tonight. We have plenty more time tonight. Let's move on with the questions.
Let's
Tessie,
hear the answer to that question.
People are dying because of your officers. Hundreds of them. No.
He just started. He just started his job. Relax. He just started his job.
You ought to run next time.
He's hiring
let's move on. Let's move
He
on.
wants to hire back officers who
Put
have been
more
fired.
people in jail because now they get their flashlights back, right?
People's lives are being taken unjustly. They get their flashlights back.
Can we resume the sheriff's answer?
Can the sheriff stop killing teenagers like fucking AJ Weber?
The sheriff didn't do that.
Can we resume the sheriff's
Yes, the
answer?
sheriff
What's the
did.
answer? It's 10
He
years long
just
enough?
started his job.
And he's already killed people.
He's
You're
been
right.
a
Just
sheriff
started-
for decades.
Already killed people. Folks, this is a meeting that we need to get through the questions of people who came out to ask them. Please respect,
Came out to ask
respect
us, and
fellow
we're people
members,
too.
respect
We're
fellow
people
members
too.
and the ability to ask questions.
We're people too.
You're in the stack, ma'am. I'll get to your
I'm not
question.
in a stack. Where's my name in a stack? You don't even know who I'm not in a stack. This is a follow-up question that you said the questioner could ask. The questioner let me ask it. So can you answer the question?
Ma'am, what is your name?
You don't need to know my name, I'm not asking you a question.
Well, the reason why I'm asking for your name, ma'am, is one, anything that happened prior to me becoming sheriff,
They're
part of
still
it-
working for you.
okay, should I just find,
Yes.
identify the
Yes,
names
you
and
absolutely
terminate them?
should look at Yes,
Hold on. You understand that when you're running any agency, as an employer, you have to go through a due process.
So why do
We can't
police
skip
get
due
due
process.
process, but poor black folks, poor brown folks, poor anybody don't get due process? You giving 10 years due process to the officers who beat John Horton to death? You're giving due process to the officers
Actually,
who shot
ma'am.
16-year-old John Weber
Ma'am.
in the back?
When I spoke during
Jay Weber?
ma'am, when I spoke during the campaign about truth and reconciliation,
You didn't speak to
Let
me in
him
the
finish the
campaign.
answer, please.
He's misstating the
finish his
facts,
answer.
so I'm going to correct it. You didn't speak to me in the campaign.
Well, yes, decency to come. Jackie Lacey did. So at least respect the fact that he's here.
I don't have
Do you have kids being killed in the street? You have no
Let's-
decency. You have no respect.
okay, let's get this on track.
Yeah, as a
Ma'am,
matter of fact,
truth
some
and
of us do.
reconciliation, obviously there's a big dispute, there's a big conflict, I recognize that. I inherit this entire mess, okay?
So no
Hold on,
police
ma'am.
have killed sheriffs
Ma'am.
have killed anybody since you come in office.
You don't put words in my mouth, ma'am, I've not
You
said
say you
that.
inherited it. Some of it is you.
I inherited the problem.
You were sure.
Okay, now, by inheriting that problem, now you can see one of the reasons for truth and
See, that was God.
Make me show it out. God said, that's why we don't get it so
That's what it's about.
Now you can see part of the reason, the necessity to go through this. It's not easy, sorry. But we get through it step by step.
By hiring
Part of it.
deputies that beat their wife?
Yeah, there you go.
Part of the process is figure out what went wrong. And believe it or not, we can honor due process and at the same time do investigations properly. Investigations involving officer-involved shootings, domestic violence.
You
just as
rehired
we-
him without due process. You rehired him.
Okay, let's move on. Carlos.
John Horton's case has been 10 years, no due process.
Carlos, question.
My name is Carlos Montes. I grew up in East LA. I graduated from Garfield High School. I live in Ball Heights. Well, the issue is the systemic killing of young Chicanos and blacks by the sheriffs.
Right.
I'm 71 years old. Every year, a young Chicano is killed, especially by the East LA sheriff. You have a problem of sheriffs that want to kill, and they kill, and they get away with it because whenever there's an investigation, there's a cover-up. Anthony Vargas
Right.
at the Maravilla housing projects, the sheriff admitted he was not even, he had the wrong person. They were after a suspect. Later on, they said he wasn't even the suspect. He was killed. And I know, the sheriffs always say he had a gun, he thought he had a gun. Mike's reaching for the gun. My experience in growing up in East LA is that the sheriffs lie. They lie to cover up their killings. Anthony Vargas was just last year. Edwin Rodriguez was sitting in a car in East LA with friends. He wasn't even driving. The sheriff said it was a stolen car. Later on, they said, no, it wasn't a stolen car. He was a passenger. He was pulled out and shot in the back and killed, Edwin Rodriguez. The county settled $1 million lawsuit. There's millions of dollars that the county pays to families for the sheriff that you are now in control of killing young Latino and black men. So there you have a systemic problem. How are you going to get rid of the killers? You talk about the process, etc., but I truly believe that your sheriffs cover up every time they kill. They lie. They plant guns. They lie. They lie. You got to get rid of those killer sheriffs. It's your job. You're on the spot now, so you got to do it. You can't cover up.
When I have have the evidence that you claim, I will not hesitate to initiate the process. Like I said, when I have the evidence, we had, since I've been in office, we've had one officer-involved shooting that resulted in the death of someone. That happened in the high desert. And that was actually an exchange of gunfire. And so now the crowd is going to go a little silent because, wait a minute, because you're saying every single time. But what happens when the suspect is armed and is exchanging gunfire with the deputies or the
A.J. Weber wasn't armed and he was shot in the back.
Hey.
So don't use an armed suspect. We talk about unarmed people. We are talking about people who have been killed in our communities who have been always unharmed. So don't use that analogy. You can kill somebody and then say that they were armed, but in our community, A.J. Weber had no gun. A.J. Weber had no gun. So don't use that pretext. You use that all the time to kill us.
And Cesar Rodriguez, he was thrown in the path.
Anthony Vargas had a Bible. So just don't use that pretext.
It's on video. You didn't see the video?
There are hundreds. Hundreds.
Figuring this out, isn't that?
And you've been a sheriff a long time. Now you're in charge. We want to know what you're going to do about it.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to have my
You've been
deputies.
part of the system. You got to make it different.
I can answer one question at a time. We're going to have our deputies properly screened, properly trained, held accountable when something
What about
goes
Karen
bad.
Mendoyan?
Where's justice? Where's justice?
Let him answer, please.
Karen Mendoya was properly screened. He was properly vetted.
You gotta fix your
and
screening process.
in that case in particular is one where due process did not happen. And that is a problem with it. And that puts the employer at the disadvantage now. Because when these same individuals sue for failure to provide due process, that's when the taxpayer, and everyone here is a taxpayer, we're shelling out the big bucks because we're terminating people without due process. We can't do that.
But it's not a problem that people get killed and then their families have to be paid millions of dollars by the county.
Don't mean to shell that out.
If you have a question, please raise your hand. We're going to get to the questions tonight. We've got extra time. We're going to do this, folks. Come on. Tessie.
Hi, my name is Tessie Borden. I live in Washington. I'm a member of several groups and I'm a member of EAPD. I do want to say that I really respect the rage of this community, the black community in particular, the brown community in particular, because you guys have not been heard for a very long time. So I just want to say, I have a different question, but I do want to say that I respect your rage. It's a very important thing to recognize it. Now, the question that I have for you, sir, is we have been asking for ICE to be taken out of the jails for a very long time. And in January, you went ahead and did that. But you actually also started allowing ICE contractors to come in and interview people, to come in and grab these folks. And that's not what we meant when we said we had ICE out of the jails. What we meant was we did not want the sheriff cooperating unless they absolutely have to. And there's an SB 54 that says when they have to. And that's what we want. And I'm ready to hear your answer as to why you think ICE contractors are any different from ICE when ICE is contracting them, their employees of ICE. That's my question.
Good question, very good one. There's a huge difference between the two. One is the contractors have always been present. They're the same contractors that the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, and every single federal U.S. Marshals use. These people are in every single day in the county jails. They are not uniformed ICE agents, and they do not do interviews. They do not do the ICE jobs of screening anybody. We're actually the ones that decide whether or not they satisfy SB 54. And we had the argument, well, we want them totally no cooperation whatsoever, but I guarantee you I'm going to have a mob of people at the jail because someone that I released from our custody is going to do a heinous crime that's happened throughout the state, and I'm hearing no end of it. I have 2 death threats already, and from other states actually. from Utah and I think South Dakota. Threats against this
Live in
person.
California.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you got it right. And, but that's the hard, delicate, the balancing act that I have to do with SB 54. We're honoring SB 54. We're kicked ICE out of the jails, out of the courthouses, out of the station, the substations. Those are the three areas where ICE was operating with impunity in the past. They had an entire room with computers and access to everything set up inside the county jail where they were doing their business. They no longer have any of that. I've met with all the groups, the advocate groups for the undocumented population. I've met with ICE explaining what we intended to do. And so far, it is working. We're actually reducing the total number of people who are being transferred to ICE custody. The amount of crimes that qualify misdemeanor crimes has shrunk by 1/3. These are all positive steps. The washout period from 5 years, we've shrunk it down to 3 years. These are all positive steps. It's more than 1.9%, it's actually 8% of our total number that impacts this. So we're making the changes where we can, but there is no magical way to have someone who qualifies. For example, a rapist, convicted, sentenced, he's now an 8109 inmate in our custody, going to be released with multiple deportation orders. He is a prime SB 54 candidate.
We're not asking for the people who qualify under SB 54.
Well, that's what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with anybody else. We actually are all both pursuing the same thing. But the misperception somehow that the contractors doing ICE's job, they're not. They're only transportation companies. That's all they are. And that is a very big difference. And ICE being able to operate freely and doing the interview work inside the county jail sends a very big message to the inmate population. Don't come here, oh my God, look, they're right there, look at them. We got rid of that entire visual image of ICE in uniform in the jails. That was a big step forward. Some people are trying to trivialize it for their own political gain, but it is a very big step forward. I can't go past that step without violating another issue, and I'll say we're out of balance. Because now I'm releasing people that are very harmful to the community, and I'm going to pay the price dearly. So is it the community is going to pay the price. It doesn't matter what I face. It's what the community is going to face when I have a convicted serial rapist, child molester, kidnapper, whatever it may be, felony, I'm releasing for our local custody.
Prison term is over.
Next question from the gentleman in the green shirt.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Christopher Wood. I'm a new member as of today. Glad to be here with the group. Currently, there are personnel files that have not been released by the sheriff's office. It's my understanding there's a difficulty in just working through all the files, so that would properly be released to anyone, say the LA Times, who would request such a release. I was wondering, from your knowledge of those documents, how many involve allegations of sexual assault on a minor by any deputies or agents of the Sheriff's Department, if any, from your analysis of those private release documents?
From my knowledge, that is, sorry, that is a very tiny number. That is a very rare event. We do have, you said sexual assault's a minor. We do have someone who's actually arrested and I think just got sentenced, actually convicted just recently behind sexual assault of a minor. He was a special victim, he was a detective. This was in the news, it was well reported, and doesn't happen often. We're very short on personnel to actually satisfy the request. The request from the LA Times alone, they asked for almost 500,000 emails. If you do the math on trying to satisfy a request like that, they're just, the logistics are enormous. All of our databases are outdated. They do not talk to each other. So a lot of these requests for PRA requests requires a lot of hand searching, which involves a lot of time. We're going to honor all of them. All the 1421 requests, we're going to honor them. They fall into 3 big categories. The one is the one you mentioned, the sexual assault. That is one category. The other one is use of deadly force, and the third is false statements. So those 3 categories are the ones we're dealing with.
Just to clarify, given that sexual assault is one of the 3 big categories, just so we're not surprised as a community, what kind of numbers are we talking about? Is this over 10, over 50? What is that number? You said a small number, but it's a big category, so I'm just curious.
From my own knowledge internally of the department and the incidents that this has been reported, it's probably going to be less than a dozen. And that's out
Sexual
of,
assault on a minor.
yes. And this is out of almost 10,000. In fact, it's probably in single digits.
There's just no way that's true.
Is that public record?
It is public record.
Is that
not because
public
of
record?
1421.
So we can look that up, right, to confirm that number?
You can look that up.
Next question, Daryl
My
Park.
only request when you're doing a request, you have to be specific in us. If you're asking a broad question, it's hard to find. But if you have a name of a person, an incident, that's an easier way to find the information.
Okay, Daryl?
Thank you. I was one of the people that fought really hard to get the old sheriff out, and we need more. We have one of the most bigoted sheriff's department in the country. That's not just me saying it, that's the United States Department of Justice. We have horrible, 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 horrible abuses. My guess is that you've got a double-digit percentage of people who could be classified as white supremacists in your department. Yes. You have people that, yes, you have shootings and all other sorts of interactions with the public. I live in Altadena. I drive home. I'll drive home tonight. I'll see someone pulled over. What do? I slow down and I look. In 3 years of living there, I've never seen a Caucasian person being pulled over by those sheriff's deputies. The statistics on that are impossible. There is massive, massive, massive racial bias. And what I need you to commit to, because you owe it to us as a public servant, and people who wanted, in this club, who wanted to get the old sheriff out, we need you to commit to go through every single person that works for you. Everyone. And you need to certify this person is not bigoted. This person does not engage in bigotry. This person has no connection to white supremacy. Because I think you will be horrified with what you're saying. I don't have any other BS answer, Alex. You are here because of the people in this room. Not just because Hans invited you, but you got elected because people wanted the old guy out. You owe it to the people in this room to commit that you will certify every single person. You will have your people go through those files and you will certify, yes, this is someone who should be or shouldn't be on the street. And if they shouldn't be on the street, you take away their badge, you take away their gun, you take away any sheriff's department paraphernalia, access to keys, access to everything. They go off somewhere else. They do not interact with anybody in the sheriff's department. I need you to pledge that right here, right now.
Independent.
Let's put it this way. The LA Times reported the racial profiling in the I-5 corridor. Recall that about, I don't know, 6-7 months ago. That situation is being investigated right now. And when we
come investigate it in Altadena. I'll drive you home to my house right now and you can sit there.
What we're going to do, we can't go employee by employee. We have to go incident by incident.
No, that's not what we're asking for. What we're asking for is you go proactively through those files. It's not about training. It's about finding the people that have the bias when they get in there. And then that those biases are grown and grown and grown and never checked. You can train people out the wazoo. If that person is a white supremacist, and a lot of them are, or they let the white supremacists do their thing because they want to get promoted and they want to just go home to their families, we have to have you commit to proactively looking at those files, proactively looking at their records, proactively talking to their coworkers and their management. If this were a company, we do a 360-degree review. Everybody would look at everybody. And the expectation would be that everybody has an obligation in your department. You first, everybody else down, to do that review and then sign on the dotted line under the penalty of perjury. If they know of incidents, they put it down, and you take that information and you instantaneously make personnel decisions. People get their due process, but they're not on the street while that due process is happening. They don't have a gun. They don't have a badge. They don't have a car. They don't have keys. They don't have a uniform. Just, it's a simple thing. You've got to be able to commit to that.
It's just having it simple is virtually impossible. You realize that?
It's not impossible.
It's not impossible. It's what any other organization
We have
has
to
do.
go, no.
Look at their tattoos.
We have to go by behavior, we have to go by incidents, we have to have some evidence. You can't make policy decisions or employment decisions without evidence.
The evidence,
Now, however,
the
what we
evidence
can do-
is mass incarceration and all the black people that are in Perry County jail. That's the evidence. That's the evidence.
What we can do
Only
is,
9% of the population
Sir.
and almost 50% of the prison population. That's the evidence of bias. That's the evidence of white supremacy. That's the evidence of all that stuff we're talking about. We don't want to hear the system. The system has been biased since it was set up. The system does not work. The system needs to be dismantled.
What about the Sheriff Gangs, the Vikings, the neo-Nazi Vikings, the 3,000 boys, the Jump Out boys? What about all those Sheriff Gangs? What are you going to do about those?
The evidence is on their bodies. Just check their
What
bodies.
are you going to do about all the Sheriff
Same way
Gangs?
you
The
profile
3,000
gang
boys,
members based on their
Vikings,
tattoos.
Jump
They
Out
have on their
boys.
bodies as well. Do
The
the same
sheriffs,
thing with their
all
officers.
gangsters.
You hear that? That was a question.
What are you going to do about the Sheriff Gangs?
we're going to respond to the evidence that we have.
We just said the evidence is on their bodies. They have tattoos that they're part of a gang.
What about the Vikings? Paul Tanaka's Vikings. What are you
Paul
going to do about
Tanaka
those?
is in prison. He
Right.
is held
What
accountable.
about the rest of the Vikings?
Tattoos for cholos are a way of identification.
Where's the rest of the Viking
Okay.
Sheriff Gangs?
Next question.
Answer that question about the tattoos. That's a legitimate question.
It was not a question. We'll get to it if you have a question.
Why can't
Right now, what gangs are they? What gangs are these sheriffs sitting right here?
Why can't you use as evidence the
Lawrence.
tattoos on your body the same way?
What gang is this sheriff gang? What gang is that sheriff gang? What gangs are they?
Can you answer that?
I will say as an employer, any employer, everybody who has a job, you tell me what your reaction would be if your employer told you, okay, undress, I want to see your
You
tattoo.
do that with people.
You're the employer now. Don't mix between the criminal and civil employment. You're the employer.
Your employees tell people to
How are you going to do that? I guarantee you, each and every one of you, if your employer told you that, you'd be shocked. And you would run to your
No, I
attorneys.
believe that there are certain jobs that require you
Okay, so,
to have.
We're going to try to get through the stack here. We're going to run over a little bit. I want to make sure that people get a chance to ask their questions. Okay?
but here's, you know what, let me go to the behavior issue because that is what this whole thing is circling around. The very first day I entered office, December 3rd of last year, the very first act I did in public was I removed the unit commander of the station in question that had the issue with the bandidos. That was the very first thing I did. We followed it up by changing the lieutenants, the sergeants. They were also transferred out of there. We did a criminal investigation. Hello?
Where were they transferred to?
Hold on.
Were they removed from service?
We're still doing a criminal investigation. We're doing administrative investigation. We have two
You
investigations
had a
going on at
Nazi
the
and you
same time.
transferred him?
All right. When we have the results of these things, it sounds like people want to.
It's not an easy job, man.
Yeah. You have to have the results of your investigations first before you make a decision. That's how it works in the employment law, anywhere. Okay, we can make decisions first, then find the evidence later. Just like in criminal cases.
When you shoot to kill.
Yeah.
You shoot first and then
Those gangs have been in operation for decades.
Who here is a cop and who here is a civil servant? Who here is a cop and who is here is a civil servant?
Who here is the sheriff?
Are you here? Who here is a firefighter?
Asking the sheriff, we're not answering you.
We'll get you in a second.
Have you ever operated under high frequency situations?
It should be silent.
Yeah, I'm ready to I never shot a kid for carrying a water pistol.
I have a comment. Many of our members were concerned and upset
Sleeping in their
with the
car.
news that we got from the LA Times and everywhere that you, in part of your Truth and Reconciliation, you took the side of Carl Mayota and the deputy who, what we were told,
was charged with domestic violence, stalking, and assault. Now, and you had said that, well, there's more to this story. We don't really know yet because we don't hear from you or your communications department when we get all this LA Times information that is perhaps incomplete. You know, why you're doing what you're doing defending a man that we've been told is, beating up his girlfriend. And there's nothing that comes back from your department that says, well, wait a minute, here's what's really happening. So what is happening with that deputy? And are those charges that we originally heard not true and that he was dismissed improperly?
Good question, thank you. One, the charges that everyone believes he was terminated for are not the charge he was terminated for. There was no evidence to sustain an allegation of domestic violence. Zero. There was no evidence to sustain breaking and entering or violating a restraining order. That is the I'm sorry, you may shake your head and oh my God, no, but I've actually seen the entire file. I've seen everything, and I've also seen information that was excluded from the file. And what does that relate to, for example, the Brady List of 300? When you violate due process, we end up stuck with employees who we should have terminated the right way. For example, you've heard the case about the infamous taco sauce incident, where deputy used taco sauce to mimic blood on an inmate's clothing in jail. That was part of it. Was LA Times put that out. It was one of their cases. His due process, they messed up that investigation. And as a result of that, we're stuck with someone who was actually a Brady List 300, Brady List employee that we cannot employ in any lawful capacity as a peace officer because we can't put him to testify truthfully under oath. So we actually created the problem by violating due process. We have to have a very solid internal investigative apparatus, so when we have a case that does merit termination, we can sustain it all the way through, and any type of challenge, be it a legal challenge, lawsuit, it doesn't matter, the case is solid. That is my commitment to you, and that is going to happen in every single case moving forward. So when we do make terminations, I've already terminated 4 people.
Thank you.
And one person I terminated was a domestic violence claim.
Okay, next question is Tony Weiss.
You spoke earlier about the need to build trust between law enforcement and the community, and as is pretty clear tonight, the trust there is rock bottom going back years and remains extremely low since you came into office. And yet, although you've claimed that Deputy Mondoyan was restored based on the findings of the Truth and Reconciliation, so-called Truth and Reconciliation Committee, there have been campaign emails reported on which showed that you were pushing for his restoration long before that committee had even been convened. It was handpicked by you, including deputies who have since been promoted. You promised to remove ICE from the jails after you were elected. You announced that what you really meant was that prisoners being turned over to ICE would simply be walked out into the yard. Then when that didn't prove sustainable, you decided that ICE could contract with people who would do the exact same thing. By the way, you said you're talking about turning over convicted rapists once they've finished their term to ICE. Last time I checked, anybody who's convicted who gets served their term is released to the public. So I'm not sure why undocumented immigrants don't deserve the same justice. You also have claimed that skyrocketing jail violence, you talked about violence going up 99%, 204%, but as has been reported, you are comparing completely different numbers that compare completely different things that are as comparable as apples and Mack trucks to make claims that are not supported by any actual evidence. And many of these moves seem to indicate that you want to free up deputies and be able to return them to a level of freedom from a time a few years ago when LA County jails were a national scandal for jail violence, not by inmates, but by deputies. And so given this established pattern of deception by yourself, why on earth would we trust you on any of this?
I don't even know where to begin with that statement here. Because, well, I'm glad we do have the whole night. But let's start with it. Let's unpack this entire thing you just got there. Let's start with some simple facts. Apples and Mack trucks. When I measure crime in the jail, when I measure assaults in the jail, we write a report. It's called a SHAD 49. The information is entered in a system called LARSIS, and we track that. And then we report to the federal, actually the United States Department of Justice, UCR crime reports. And that's how all the academicians, all the researchers do their research because they know what the crime levels are throughout the entire nation. We also do that in the Sheriff's Department. We've been doing that for decades. We do that in the county jails.
And the record for doing that, the system was completely transformed 2 years ago so that they are now reporting entirely different statistics.
That is incorrect. And unless you profess to be a subject matter expert on how we report things inside the jail, we have 4 different systems in operation. One of them is LARSIS and the SHAD 49s. That has been in effect for decades. That has never changed. We have ELATs, we have CARTs, we have all these different systems that didn't talk to each other very well. However, each and every time a crime occurred where an inmate assaulted an inmate, a deputy wrote a crime report. We counted all the crime reports and added them up. And we've been doing that for years. We've been doing it successfully for years. The problem was people were only paying attention to the amount of force of deputies against inmates. They were not counting or even caring about the amount of times inmates assaulted inmates. In fact, the county council, I had this discussion with them and with the federal monitors, the county council said, well, that wasn't important because it wasn't a constitutional concern. I'm quoting county council. And I told county council, my concern is all the violence in the jails, not just the use of force of inmates against, the staff against the inmates, but the force that inmates are using on staff in terms of assaulting staff and inmates assaulting each other. That is important. There's 3 prongs of jail violence. You only cared about one, and then the monitors are only looking at one of the 3. But there's no such thing as a one-legged stool. You need 3 legs on a stool. When we put this information in place, we measured it, statistically solid, and even from the Office of Inspector General, their own report, their own information came up with the same result. It's all going up. Everything is going up. And should I just accept, well, it's going up and ignore it? That's not a responsible thing to do. Just this past 2 weekends, I had one deputy assaulted by 6 inmates up at NCCF, broken his nose. I had the video of it. In fact, I had the video, someone here has the video. We have it on a Y drive. Not a Y drive, on a thumb drive. So you can see for yourself with your own 2 eyes what it looks like. I have a female custody assistant, Lakewood Station. She was assaulted by the inmate twice her size. She was beaten to bloody pulp and orbital socket crushed. And did we make that up? No, we did not. That demonstrates the conditions in the jail of violence. Inmates assaulting inmates. Inmates overdosing on drugs. The prevalence of narcotics flowing through the jails because we were not doing proper inspections. We weren't doing random searches the way we're supposed to be doing. We weren't using intelligence. We weren't using the canine searches as we did in the past. A free flow of drugs into the county jail system and all the inherent problems that entailed. Did we make that up? No, we didn't. So however you choose to characterize what I'm doing, that is your prerogative. You have the right to do that. However, as a responsible administrative leader of the organization, I have to work with the facts on the ground that I have to make sound decisions to move the organization forward to serve the community. And everything I do in terms of ensuring due process allows me something very, very important, to turn the tide and people start getting hired by the department from the community because they trust the department. It's not a destabilized, unsecure environment for employment. Imagine you send your son, your daughter to a job where, well, you could get fired tomorrow, or they may change the standard and, well, good luck with that. Or hazed, any of those things. The point is, we have to ensure a stable environment to convince people to come to provide public safety services to the community.
Is West Hollywood safe for people from Ed Buck when you're West Hollywood Sheriff Station won't actually charge?
I'm glad you mentioned that. That case is currently being investigated. Not only is the current case being investigated.
Is it the first time or the second time? Because there's 2 black men that have been
Now we had to go back to the first incident, and they're redoing the entire first incident in light of the second incident to ensure they didn't miss anything and they could present a case to the district attorney for possible prosecution. And that is going to be based on the evidence. It's not going to be based on a lynch mob. It's not going to be based on a wish list. It has to be
Nice choice of language. Nice choice of language.
Next question, Carlos Juarez.
Black people were protesting against it.
My name's Carlos Juarez. I grew up here in Glendale. I live in Echo Park. I've been with Hans now for just a little under 2 years. And the first thing, before I ask any questions to you, or to you, make any statements about anything else in particular, is I understand. I understand. I understand because I too am related as a brown person of a victim of that type of crime that you here are trying to stand for. I just told you, me, Carlos Juarez. I understand the rage and the love and the lost love of a dying victim, a dead relative at the hands of a police officer. I understand. So please understand that. Please appreciate that of myself as you listen to me speak. Because I completely understand as a four-eyed human being who happens to be brown here on the planet. With you. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm pissed off. I came here to talk about shelters of hope. That's what I came here to talk about. I came to talk about the border. Just so happens the border is being militarized, but I'm not going to get into that right now. One of my questions for you, sir, is the militarized approach and appearance of our train station, the Red Line, Metro, right? Everybody sees that. Your co-workers, your subordinates standing in the lobby of the Metro station with automatic and semi-automatic machine rifles, correct? Militarizing Los Angeles, correct? Just like the border is being militarized, correct? Yes or no? Okay. I happen to be a civil servant and a veteran wildland firefighter. Have you ever acted, other than the gentleman who spoke in the back, have you ever acted under high-frequency scenarios? Do you know what it is to be having an automatic, semi-automatic gun, rifle pointed at you while you're trying to make a decisive, educated, safe decision? Have you ever experienced that? Yes or no?
So you have PTSD?
You have. So check it out. No, here it is. You guys turned it into something different. I had a question for him. I still do have a question for you. But you guys are attacking the man. He just started.
Ask your question.
Why is ICE still in the IRC? Why is ICE still in the IRC? Please, it doesn't matter. I'm an independent contractor just the same. You'll see my work on Fox. You'll see my work on Channel 52. You'll see my work on whatever TV show you probably guys are all watching. So, why is ICE still with us? And why does it appear as though your subordinates, your co-workers, respectfully, are appearing as though our town, our home, our city, our county is being militarized? Because I agree 100% with the gentleman from Altadena. Been there, done that. Yeah, just like the man with the green shirt. Been there, done that. And I'm very familiar with those cliques inside. Why are there still cliques inside? Just like that man asked.
In where?
Inside. In the IRC.
He just said a little while. All right, let me ask.
You were listening to what you're saying. You know what the IRC is.
First question. ICE contractors inside the county jail, not ICE, the contractor. SB 54 requires us to somehow effect a transfer for those who qualify. It can't happen by magic. There's no such thing as a
You just started your job.
Well, That is our best option as of date. If someone can come up with a better option, we're all ears. Please present it. I'd like to hear it. Because we've been kicking this idea around for quite a while. We've been rehashing it back and forth. We walked all through Inmate Reception Center, through the TST bus yard. We've been doing everything possible to figure out a way to do it with the least amount of impact to the inmate population. And to
Who
honor
have
its
already
future
served
support.
their time.
Okay, now, just as you claim that, I have 100 people on the outside will say, how dare you? And in fact, they were all at the Civilian Oversight Commission. I sure wish you guys would have been there this
I've
morning.
been there.
Next time, please show up there. On the second part of your question, Carlos, it was about militarization. I'll give you a simple
It
observation.
doesn't feel comfortable to walk through.
It came from the Palmdale, City of Palmdale, the city manager of Palmdale. We were meeting a few weeks ago up there, and they were explaining how great it is to work with the Palmdale Sheriff's Station. They're working with the city representatives, with the community, trying to lower that mistrust between the community and the Sheriff's Department, and say, wow, look at what our deputies are doing. Just to the west, I think they're referring to Simi Valley, one of the cities to the west in Ventura County. They're shopping around to get a Bradley fighting vehicle, one of those Bradley vehicles from the military surplus. The Palmdale deputies were trying to find an ice cream truck. What does that tell you about the motive, the difference between the two organizations? That is the character of those Palmdale Station deputies. And that is what we're trying to do throughout the entire county. When we have trust within the organization feels they have the ability to go out there and trust the community and work with the community and dare to do things they normally would not have done because the organization, and someone said it, you're right, it tends very conservative. The entire law enforcement profession is a very conservative one. We're trying to get the whole needle moved to the center, and it doesn't happen overnight. But we have to trust them to do their job, and they have to trust you.
We don't have to trust people who are not trustworthy. That's called being an idiot.
Okay, well, we're trying to be.
Trust people who kill 16-year-old children.
We're trying to be constructive here, ma'am.
How is that?
Yes.
What
about the Sheriff James?
Trust people who are not trustworthy, who abuse.
Yeah, you didn't refer to the Sheriff James. You did not refer to that question.
That's actually an excellent question. But my name is Jessica Craven. I have one question that is it should be just a brief answer from you, and then a follow-up on another question that was asked. Where are the 22 minutes of missing tapes from Waukesha Wilson's cell? Do you need more background?
Yeah, maybe it's due to the clicks.
Does someone want to give me background on this? Who's more qualified than me?
3 years ago, Waukesha Wilson was billed in detention. Louder.
3 years ago?
The footage is LAPD.
Do you really not know that?
They're claiming that she shared the site.
Okay. So my other question is on the gentleman that you hired who's accused of abusing his wife and being a stalker. You say that he was not convicted of abusing his wife or being a stalker, but the 5 county supervisors seem to disagree with you because they have come out against you in force to disagree with you on this policy, which is highly unusual. Why? How is it that they all see the situation? I'm assuming that they're privy to the same documents that you are. How are they? They're not. But so they don't know the case as well as you do, and they all 5 are wrong.
I'll tell you this, ma'am. Not only was he not convicted, he was never charged. Not even past the DA. Domestic violence expert and another DA.
Just like the cops.
52 years of experience as deputy district attorneys reviewed the entire case and said this is not a case. They didn't.
Video of him trying to get into her house, and a female deputy was attacked. And instead of letting this go through evidential procedure, you don't believe a woman when she says she's attacked and has video evidence of a man trying to break into her house. You didn't have to rehire him. You could have waited till there was evidence and everyone gets to see it.
Ma'am, hold on a second. She raised a very important point, and that is part of the bad information that's being floated out there in public. And intentionally, unfortunately, by some of the members of the Board of Supervisors. He actually lived in that house.
He does sound like trouble. Yeah, and he didn't live there anymore, and he was trying to break in, and she had a restraining order against him. All I know is I don't feel safe if you let a deputy who is saying she's being attacked by this man. How do I feel in my house? I'm not a deputy. Women don't feel safe with your department based on what you have done by rehiring a man who was photographed trying to get into his ex-girlfriend's house. It doesn't matter that it used to be his house. He didn't live there anymore for a reason. She has bruises, photos of the bruises. She's also a deputy. You talk to deputies getting attacked in a jail? She was getting attacked in her own house. There was no need to rehire him, but he was driving you around during the campaign.
Ma'am, you seem to know more about the case than I do, and that is your prerogative.
Maybe you should learn more.
Here's what
You don't know anything about
investigate. You're going to look at it, and you have to get due process, and there's still things we need to learn. You took this job. You can't now say, "Oh, it's too tough. I don't have the people."
Actually,
how can we investigate?
I'm more than happy.
Delegate to your department to look for things and find them. Don't keep saying you're going to. Do it now. You couldn't even answer the pledge from that gentleman who asked you. Just pledge. And you won't even do that.
Ma'am, we do process, we investigate. We don't find what
So I
doesn't
guess
exist.
video evidence just isn't enough.
What is video evidence?
The video evidence is not accurate because it's not.
What's not accurate about it? Because he used to live there?
No, he currently lived there.
Why'd you let him work still? There's no room. There's no room for beating women. Why'd you let him work?
He currently lived there, in the video and the restraining order are a year apart. I don't know if you understand that.
I guess I'm a little woman and I don't understand.
No, ma'am, not at all. It's for the facts.
So here's, I think that we can all agree, however, that it was a truly baffling choice in the light of the many ways that you could have worked to make this community trust you. They don't. Right now, listen to these people. They feel unheard. They feel unseen. They feel unsafe. They feel like you were supposed to come in as a reformer and you are doing the opposite. So why, of all of the hills to die on, are you going to die on the hill of choosing a spousal abuser to continue to defend against the opposition of everybody in the city when there's these amazing causes you can take on? There are people whose deaths you can avenge. There are innocent victims you can speak up for, and you're defending a wife beater? Why?
Let's get some facts straight here. And I'll give you a case that happened again in the high desert this weekend. Someone was kidnapped by her domestic partner, kidnapped with her children, assaulted. She managed, while she was being kidnapped and driven away, got a hold of her friend, "Could you please call the sheriffs? I need help." This happened not once, it happened twice this weekend. They believed that by calling the sheriffs, yes, we could respond. And we could help these people, they were in true need. And we did arrest the suspect. And the suspect committed some pretty barbaric acts. And they're being held accountable for that. We do that all the time. Just in the last
How is that relevant?
Hold on. Because she's saying that people don't believe. We arrested, actually 3 of our employees were arrested in the last, I'd say since the beginning of January. 2 of those 3 incidents, we were the investigating agency. Okay? Yes, you may find that hard to believe.
That's true.
Well, the point is, you're raising the allegation that somehow a decision that we made based on evidence, every single employment decision we make has to be based on the evidence we have. It can't be what we wanted to think, what we wanted to believe. It has to be based on the actual evidence. And that is what the evidence dictates. The evidence we have says that no domestic assault occurred. The evidence we have says that no entry occurred. The violation of the restraining order, it was a temporary one, which everyone gets for 10 days, and you have to show up in court to follow up. No one showed up to follow up. So the temporary restraining order was dismissed. And then, we could go on about this, but that's all.
The gentleman in the black shirt.
Yeah, I wanted.
What's your name?
Eugene. And so I guess my question, I have a couple of questions, but I'll get to, I guess, the question that was on my mind, and that was, earlier you had said that the Sheriff's Department cannot investigate itself. You yourself said that you think that the sheriffs are not the best agency to actually investigate themselves, correct?
Yes, I did
Right,
say that.
so-
I want to entertain alternative to that.
So will you agree here to give the Oversight Committee more power? Because I've spoken to the Sheriff's Oversight Committee board members, and they have said that they have ruled out of policy in many of the decisions, and it was the Sheriff's Department who ignored their claims and ignored their rulings, and they said that you guys do not want to actually give them any sort of power to regulate.
Was that this sheriff or was it his predecessor?
That was his predecessor, but I'm asking you if you are willing to, I guess, pledge here, like the other individuals, and say that you will work toward giving the Oversight Committee more power and actually make your officers accountable to the community. If you actually care about transparency and if you actually care about the people that you're supposed to serve, I'm asking you if you are willing to actually take the step necessary to prove that to the community by giving those who are actually doing their job, because the community seems to actually trust the Oversight Committee. They actually do care. And I'm asking you if you're willing to take the next step and perhaps even go against your union, your sheriff's union, and pledge here and now to say that you will work towards giving them the power necessary to do their job. And secondly, I wanted to quickly also make a point. Will you also pledge here that those sheriffs that do have gang tattoos, or if inmates come up and say, hey, I know that this sheriff, or I heard that this sheriff is a part of this gang, will you then pledge to also investigate those sheriffs? And also follow up, how many of those sheriffs who you know are gang members have you fired or removed from your jobs? Because my knowledge is that you guys do nothing with them at all. You guys allow them to stay on the force.
Or you transfer them.
Or you transfer them, which is equally problematic. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question.
We have two models right now. We have LAPD model. You have a chief of police who's appointed by the mayor, answerable to the mayor and the city council, and to a police commission. Hold on. You know where I'm going with this, right?
He's got to answer here.
Now, does that model work for you?
No.
Those aren't civilians on the LAPD commission. We're talking about real civilians on the Sheriff's Oversight Commission. And they have no power. You think Steve Soderoff gives a fuck?
The LAPD commission is civilians.
They are appointed by the mayor. For political appointments.
You don't want to be a guy.
Steve Soderoff, the president of the police commission, was a failed mayoral candidate in 2000 who ran against the federal consent decree. He was against the federal consent decree. And when the consent decree went out, Garcetti made him the fucking president of the police commission. You think he's a civilian that is going to oversee?
Hey, hold on.
That's your model? That's what you're looking up to.
If you compare the police commission model with the civilian oversight commission model, remember, they're appointed by the board of supervisors. They're also appointed by politicians.
Only 5 of them, though. The others are presumably community representatives.
Right.
We fought for this. It took us 5 years to win this. This is the only one that exists in the state.
Here's my pledge to you. I'm going to work with the Oversight Commission. In fact, I made that pledge today. We're going to reset the button with them. I need them in order to make informed decisions, good decisions that reflect the will of the community. I need the Oversight Commission to provide that information, to be good representatives of the community.
Give them subpoena power.
Yes.
Now, SB 1421 actually gave about 3/4 of what you're seeking for in the subpoena power.
No, it
Hold on.
Bill, how are you
Hold
going
on.
to tell us what it said?
That's true. All right, now here's the situation with the Oversight
It has
Commission.
nothing to do with the Oversight Commission.
Hold on. No, the California Constitution, the county charter, there's very specific roles and responsibilities in the elected official who occupies the office of sheriff in running the sheriff's department. The board of supervisors have their function. They have to provide oversight in how the monies are spent of the sheriff's department, and that is a proper role. We have to work in conjunction, everyone together as a team. And the community has to provide the ultimate oversight by deciding who becomes sheriff, who becomes elected as the board of supervisors.
Why does he sound like Trump? You elected me. I get to do anything I want to do. Right.
Actually, no, ma'am.
That's what you're saying. That is what you're saying.
That's what you hear.
You don't have to be accountable to anybody.
That might be what you're hearing.
Because people elected you to office.
Last question, Lauren Steiner. This is
Wait. Let's finish about the gangs and
we
the
got to be
sheriff.
out of here by 9:30. gotta cut it off.
But he didn't answer the entire question.
What are you gonna do about the cliques? What are you gonna do about the cliques in the jails or the cliques within your squads?
The
The tattoos, the
He asked
cliques.
about the tattoos, he asked about the cliques.
Yes.
Gang
What are you gonna do
members.
about that? And why did you give that guy that job back?
If we have evidence of gang activity, criminal activity, any behavior that runs contrary to your interests, the organization's interests, we will take appropriate action. I promise you that. As a matter of fact, I'll give you an example of that we already did, and this happened 2 weeks ago. As we were reviewing the complaint of the deputies that identified being harassed by the bandidos and made a complaint precursor, we looked at the information on the complaint. We dug a little further into it. We found out that there was a memo that was written in June of last year by members of that same station who complained about harassment from that same group of individuals and identified individuals that they should have launched an administrative investigation. And my predecessors, they sat on the information, they didn't do anything. We took that information and we initiated the appropriate administrative investigation. That is going on as we speak.
Was it a transfer or firing them?
You
said it was a transfer.
wait, you're mixing two things. We transferred people that are in the leadership positions. The people that we're now investigating include people that are in management or leadership positions and line staff. That is all part of the investigation that is going on right as we speak. So we have a criminal case, we have an administrative case. So we're taking proactive measures, and we have to operate under the limits of the law. I know people have a lot of passion and it's
But those
well-meaning
same
intention.
limits don't keep you from killing us. That same methodical approach that you keep talking about does not keep you from killing us at will. So if you can apply that same approach to you and your deputies to us, then maybe you got a point, but that's not a point. You cannot keep saying due process. You cannot keep saying we're going to go through this thing. We are dying because you and your deputies kill us because of our race and solely because of that. So please get off of that. You want to go through due process, go, but apply the same thing to us in the streets.
I expect and demand of my deputies when they do their pedestrian stops, when they do their traffic stops, when they do their searches, when they do their arrests, they apply the same standard of due process. In fact, it'd be very difficult to demand that of them, but I can't afford them the same thing. That'd be very odd. We have to apply due process
They are affording
everywhere.
it now, we are.
Members yielding time to Lauren Steiner for the final question.
Okay, so you're a political elected office now. It's not just by the book bureaucratic, okay? The optics of what's going on with this Karen Mandian is really bad. You have the newspaper writing stories about how you're at odds with the supervisors. They're saying, okay, they can't fire someone, so they'll cut off your ability to pay his salary. I mean, this is ridiculous. Isn't this embarrassing to you? You're here in front of a Democratic club. This club endorsed you. The Feel the Burn Club endorsed you. And I endorsed you as an independent journalist, and I'm embarrassed. Because it seems like you are, to use that lady's phrase, dying on the hill. This is the hill that you've picked to die on. There's pictures of you vacationing with this man. We know this man drove you around. And you're talking about a technicality. I'm talking about the optics. Al Franken resigned as a U.S. Senator because he groped 6 women. Now, there was half the Democratic Party, including many women, not me, thought he should have stayed on because he was a good progressive. But he took one for the team because he recognizes that as a senator, he represented the Democratic Party. And he didn't want to be like that pussy grabber in chief on the other party. So he, with the urging of Kristen Gillibrand, who was probably using it for political gain, I might say, he resigned his Senate seat because of that. Because he understands optics. You are an elected official now. Articles are being written about you in the New York Times. People here are questioning your decision. I want to know, do you care about the optics? Do you care about how you look? And how you feel by those optics? Yes.
First and foremost, I care about the truth. I'm in the business of actually seeking the truth and holding people accountable when I get them the truth.
Then why do they have to do
Okay, that is-
getting the truth out? You're not putting the truth out, and the LA Times has requested the files, they have not gotten them, and there's still, reason is going
Everyone
after
in this
them.
room that wants files, please call your supervisor, ask them, what are you doing to release the
Just
funds?
release them.
Release the
them.
funds. We have to hire people to do all these requests. We have a very skeleton crew of
Bring
people.
everything to money, how about how people are involved? People are being killed, people are being sexually
You're not a
assaulted.
judge. The
All
judge
right.
goes after the truth. You're not a judge. You're a sheriff.
I make
And the
decisions.
Oversight Commission are very disturbed by your decision to rehire them. That's the Oversight Commission. What's the point of having oversight if you don't even listen to them? That's what they're there for.
Okay, Lauren, regarding the optics are if I abandon the truth out of political convenience, then I'm not a leader. And I was elected to be a leader. I wasn't elected to be a politician. And you may not agree with that, and that is your right not to agree with that.
You're
But
to
I
set a moral
guarantee you,
standard, and you're not doing that.
the moral standard I'm setting is that I'm going to follow the rule of law. I'm not going to follow the mob. And that is the difference.
We're not a mob.
Let me just say one thing, just because I've been sitting here, right? If you can briefly. Yeah, briefly. What I see right now is that because I'm hurting too, right? And I feel the pain that I go through as a black man in LA County, and I voted for it. And one of the things that I do know, just by sitting here watching you, you're not a politician. Because I don't see this here. It sounds like you're being honest. That's what it sounds like to me. It doesn't sound like you're trying to like play a game with me by sitting here listening. It sounds like you're just trying to do your best. That's what it sounds like. So I voted for you.
I voted for you too.
It's been maybe 3 or 4 months or so. I pray that God gives you everything you need to do your job effectively, to make sure that we're safe, that we're not dying because of our color, and not because of a technicality or case. People still alive. Because that's what I'm hearing. Live, not hate. So I pray that you be able to do everything that you were elected to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Closing comments. Because he's waited so long, we have a new member who is running for district attorney in 2020. I want to give a chance for Richard Ceballos to say a few remarks. He'd be the first Latino, openly LGBT district attorney here in Los Angeles County. Richard Ceballos.
Thank you. I'm going to keep this brief because I've been told